Hi, I'm Callum, but you can call me the Casual Hammerer. These are my first impressions of the General's Handbook for 2020. I grabbed it on Saturday morning and I spent the weekend reading it and thinking about it, making notes. I've been going crazy with it this year. As ever, I'm going to be coming at this from the casual player point of view, so that means I'm not going to be talking about points or really drilling into the specific battle plan changes. There are way more qualified Age of Sigmar YouTubers out there already covering that stuff. If you want that stuff, go watch theirs. Content around it. If you're here for the love of the game and talking about all things Age of Sigmar on why I in particular love it so much and why this book is a good reflection of that, stick around. Because for me, the General's Handbook is a good way to see the current state of the game and also get a sense of what the design team is currently thinking and experimenting with in terms of the future of the game and where it's going to go over the next year in particular. So I'm going to take it section by section and give my thoughts, so that means timestamps down in the description below for those who want to jump around, and maybe those chapter things that YouTube have started doing if I can figure them out. So there's a couple of things you're going to see as we go through this year's book. Stuff that I'd call the three main themes. So one is experimentation, that's seeing both an open play and narrative play with the new game modes and rules additions that both of those sections introduced this year, which is really good. And then there's this idea, second major theme for this year is multiplayer battles for 3 or more players, which is going to be great for some, but for somebody like me who struggles to even find one person to play against regularly, I read these rules and go, wouldn't that be fun? And then knowing that I'm never going to be able to play that sort of game when it comes to Warhammer, which is a shame. But yeah, there's loads of stuff this year for people who have 3 other people who all collect Warhammer and that have someone to play regularly. Anyway. So yeah, every style of play this year has some sort of coalition of death rule set associated with it, which is cool. And then finally, as ever, the refining of the competitive side of the game. That means taking what was good and making it better, and killing some of the rules cheesing that has been evident over the past year in particular, alongside starting to rein in the number of options to consider when you're building your lists. So, let's kick things off with the open play games section, which this year is mostly about Skies of Slaughter. And I'm going to point out the obvious here. We've already had these rules in issues of White Dwarf this year. I mean, I get it, not everyone buys or reads White Dwarf, and books like the General's Handbook is a great way to take what works there, repackage it, and sort of give it that super official stamp of approval. But yeah, like I said, it's not a bad thing, but still, I would prefer to see something new here, because Skies of Slaughter isn't something I'm super enthusiastic about giving a go. But yeah, I can see how some people will like it, and like I said, it's a good way to sort of repackage it and give it to a wider audience. It looks like it could be fun, but for me it seems a bit too involved as a rule set. There's a lot of concepts for players to wrap their head around, like velocities, facing and arcs, sequences of play, maneuvers, new types of attacks, turning sequences, all these things that are there and have been bolted onto the Age of Sigmar rules to make it feel more like these sweeping aerial battles. But for me it just doesn't seem to work. It just seems too complicated and there's too much going on. Maybe if I sit down and play it, I understand the appeal, but for now I'm just sort of like, it seems fun, I'm not going to play it. Also highlights one glaring issue currently with the model range in Age of Sigmar. This is a game mode all about using those larger flying units in the game, and the Skies of Slaughter rules and War Scrolls in particular highlight 2 things. 1, that all these models are on the expensive side, and 2, there's a limited number to choose from, particularly for some factions. Order are fine, they've got dragons and eagles and flying turtles and sharks, and Chaos are there with their usual bevy of demon princes, and anything with wings and claws is in the game in some form, and you can use them. That's all good. Even Death are involved, and this is where you really start to see the limited options and the problem of them. Death have 5 variations of the same model kit, which is the zombie dragon. It's a great kit, but only having 5 variations of one kit to choose from is not as good as having a few variations of one kit and 2 or 3 other unique kits to choose from for Chaos and loads more for Order. And then you get to Destruction, which is just the Mega Boss or Maw-Crusher, which again is a fantastic kit. I have one myself, I love it, but as a mainly destruction player, only having one unit option for this game mode does not get me super excited to give it a go, because what if I play it and I don't like playing as the mega boss? I can't then grab something else off my shelf and give it a go that way, which is what this sort of rule set is there to do. You've played lots of games of Age of Sigmar, let's try something else new with the models you have. At the moment, the support in the models is not there to back up the game mode, which is a weird inverse of the usual problem, where we don't have rules to back up the vast number of models in the range. This time we have a lack of models to back up the rules. It's an interesting problem to have. Then the last bit in the open play section this year is our first instance of coalition battle rules. These are these 3 or more player multiplayer battles, which are peppered all the way through this year's General's Handbook, which is good on the whole, but I mostly played 2-player games like everyone else. Getting multiple players in one place to play a game of Age of Sigmar is a big ask, and while it's good to see them giving support to those larger scale games, maybe it's a bit too much support. It's hard to tell. The open play version of these rules is all about giving you those quick and dirty, interesting scenarios, but like I said, this time it's focused around creating these dynamic multiplayer battles and giving you the appropriate objectives, twists, and all that stuff to go with it. So yeah, that's the open play section. Next we come to the narrative play games section, which is usually my favourite section of the book, and this year it is my extra special top pick, seal of approval, give it a pair, or whatever sort of marker you have of excellence section of the book. So first things first, we have our Take a Drink team battle rules. In particular, these narrative twists and tools you can use to enhance narrative-based games and campaigns for team play, particularly these really interesting Fog of War rules, and this idea of passing letters around the battlefield to your allies and there being a delayed response and reaction to those letters and orders, which is really interesting and I can see working really well on the table. Same goes for this idea of alliance and betrayal, just that idea that you're working together with somebody and at the last possible moment they stab you in the back, or somebody assassinates your hero character and you have no idea who that is, or somebody tries to assassinate, it goes wrong, you find out who did it, and then suddenly you've got a target that you're going to be taking out no matter what happens in the rest of the battle. It's fun, it makes a lot of sense, it works well with this idea of having interesting multiplayer battles in this year's General's Handbook. Slight downside though is as it puts it here, to get the most out of it you're going to need an independent adjudicator in the form of a games master, which is not a new concept for narrative players, but still feels like there could have been another solution to this issue, but I get the need for it and it does enhance it and makes it more of like a group effort, and I can see it working really well. All this stuff though feeds into the campaign rules that are included in this year's General's Handbook, which is the Whisper Engine, which is a campaign all about team-based battles for, as it says here, 4 to 7 players, which is a lot of players, which is both good and bad. First, let's go over the good stuff. So, some really good rules additions here that make this campaign feel unique and stand out over others. So one is this idea of the bidding step, and this creates the coalitions that will be used during the battles in the battle step of the campaign, which then inform the aftermath step when the map changes. And it's really good. It's a bit convoluted. You'll read it and you'll be like, huh? And then you'll read it again and you'll be like, huh? And then you'll read it again and you'll be like, ah. And then you'll read it a last time and you'll be like, I think I understand it. But it's really cool and I can see it working really well. It's that sort of, everyone's bidding and changing their allegiances in this sort of intense sort of like pre-battle step, and then you go into your battle step and then that all changes again during the battle step. The alliances you forge may fall apart. The person you got stuck with may become an ally you have for the rest of the campaign. I can see it working really well, and again it changes the map entirely each time you play from reading these rules. Downside though, 4 to 7 players. Each game will require 4 players meeting up at once to play, which is a big ask for a lot of people involved in this hobby. Not everyone has access to a friendly local games store with the space to play games of this size. Not everyone has the space in their own houses to play games of this size. Not everyone's part of a gaming group or club that can play and does play games and campaigns of this size. So it just sort of feels like it's a really good idea. It's got a super limited audience. And it's just like, it's a good and bad thing. I'm never going to personally play this campaign myself because I don't have the people around me to support it, but I can definitely see myself cannibalizing the contents of this campaign to use for a homebrew 2 to 3 player campaign, because the assets that are included with it are super simple and super clear. So you have, as you can see here, the map. There's very few extra details on it. There's only a couple of name places, and the map itself is super clean. It can be any of the mortal realms. It could be anywhere within the setting of Age of Sigmar. You can easily change the text, you can swap out the images, you can do with this what you will. You can change the size and shape of it to match your campaign, which is perfect, and it's something I've been wanting to have for a while, because campaign maps and stuff like that have this flavour to them that's really hard to recreate when you don't have access to Games Workshop artists and the print media templates and all that stuff. The other cool thing is this table of special location icons, because while the images and the text work together to create the locations and things you're battling over for this campaign, the icons themselves, because they've got no background material behind them, are quite easy to cut out of this and use on your own maps, your own campaign setup, your own bespoke rules and everything like that. So I'm definitely going to be doing that. Expect to see these on my campaign packets soon. And as ever, there are battle plans geared around Coalition of Death, take a shot, that have more of a narrative bent and help enhance the campaign if you're running the campaign, which is really good to see. Now we come to my favourite section in the entire General's Handbook for this year, and possibly my favourite section in any General's Handbook we've had so far for Age of Sigmar, the Anvil of Apotheosis. Even saying it gives me chills. That's how excited I am over these rules. If you haven't guessed already, I'm a big fan of making my own stuff up for Age of Sigmar. From battle plans to campaigns, anything I can tinker with has been tinkered with at some point. That's just how I enjoy this hobby. I've even played around with creating bespoke wall scrolls in the past. Now though, through the Anvil of Apotheosis, like I said, it gives me chills. Everyone has a clear and reasonably balanced rule set to make their own heroes that can be used in all styles of play, providing the players involved agree on using custom heroes before they get to the table. Before I go any further, I just want to applaud the elegance in which these rules are presented. My day job is actually as a games designer, and while I work in video games, a lot of the stuff you see in Warhammer books like the General's Handbook is a good reflection of games design documentation in general, and the idea of creating custom heroes in a game that has so many interlocking systems and mechanics as Age of Sigmar is a potential minefield of confusion for players, but here it's broken down into super clear steps with a wide decision space for players to experiment in, which is a fancy way of saying players are given the options to make the characters they want without breaking the game, and maybe learn and understand things about the game they didn't previously by engaging in these rules. I've already made a couple of custom heroes, and each one of them feels unique, not just in terms of race and archetype, but the end result of those heroes. So, hold on, if I go to the page with the example characters on, that highlights it the best. So, creation covers the main hero archetypes we have for Age of Sigmar, from powerful lone warriors like this dude here, to wizards and people palling around with animal companions or spiritual companions, to people like this dude here riding on mounted beasts into battle, all the way up to, if I don't close the document accidentally at the moment of dramatic height, there we go, all the way up to epic gargantuan mounts that your champion is riding into battle on the back of. That's how robust these rules are. You have ability to make a hero of any size and shape effectively, and the main things that allow you to do that are super simple rules, like as we can see here. Go through the pages. Down in step 1, deciding your destiny point limit. At the champion level, 20 destiny points gives you just enough leeway to make a hero that is ever so slightly overpowered without breaking the game, which is exactly what you need for custom content like this. It makes you feel great using that hero on the table if they're doing things you wouldn't normally be able to do, but it doesn't feel like you're overpowered. They can still be defeated. They're not gonna cut a path of destruction across the whole battlefield. They're gonna get in and do their thing. Maybe not even do their thing, but they're going to do it and do it well. And you're going to have fun playing with them. And then at the 40 points limit, which is the Conqueror level, you're going to be making a character that can go toe-to-toe with Age of Sigmar's most legendary heroes. So I'm talking about you being able to take a little tiny custom hero and walking up to Archaon and going 10 rounds with him and standing a chance of walking out unscathed, which is really good fun, and there's lots of potential there for interesting games and campaigns to come from it, which is amazing. Making characters itself is a pure joy. It's just super simple. Choose your points limit, pick your race, which informs your allegiance on which army you're going to be using that character in. That gives you your baseline stats. And then you choose your weapon loadout from the limited set of loadouts here, which is fine, because one thing it does encourage is using these weapon sets to sort of build out what your hero can do, and then it sort of like strongly advises that you then customize your sword into a sword of soul taking, or a bow and arrow into something else, like a crossbow, or even like a wand that fires lightning. Whatever you can do, as long as it fits with the stats you end up with, it's fine. Just use these as a starting point, which is how you need to present these rules, and it, like I said, does it perfectly. And then after that, you're choosing your archetype, which defines your role in the battlefield, from support roles in Acolyte to leading from the front or backing commanders, to wizards dealing out spells and all your spell laws for your army, which is great. After that, you're choosing your bestial companion, which come in one of 3 flavours. Key thing to remember here is that you do not have to choose to have a bestial companion at all. You can just have your hero on his own. It's always fun to have a little pet palling around with you in the form of a minor beast or something to ride on as a mounted beast, all the way up to, as we saw, a gargantuan beast on a giant base that's going to cost you a fortune, but because it's your own hero at this point, you're going to have a greater investment and greater reward from that purchase, which is awesome. After that, you're adding some customization to your beast, bearing in mind that it comes from your base points limit. But anything you spend here, you won't be able to spend on your character, which is the last bit of character creation, which is just stat enhancements to your baseline stats and your weapon stats, and being able to buy more abilities that make your hero more in line with other hero characters that you'll find in battle tomes and on war scrolls. Like I said, super simple, super elegant, and it gives you great characters that feel unique without breaking the game. It's a concept that's so good that I really want to see it expanded to cover the elements that have been missed out in this first iteration, so I really want to see this included in battle tomes in the future. So say you get your Gloomspite gets battle tome next year, let's hope, probably the year after or the year after that if we're being realistic, but you get your new Gloomspite gets battle tome, and in there next to the Path to Glory rules you have a Anvil of Apotheosis rules section that sort of gives you these rules again, but it's, instead of being generalized like these are, it's geared just around making heroes from Gloomspite gets. So rather than just being able to choose Grots, you can choose Troggoths, you can choose Gargants, all that stuff, all different types of Grots with different baseline stats. And then from there, you'll be able to make a more custom hero that fits in better with that army, and things like your bestial companions, they'll of course be squigs, which behave differently and have access to different abilities than the more genericized animals we see in the standard beast tables and abilities you get in the current rules. Because, as we know, squigs behave much differently than the giant sharks the Idoneth Deep can ride into battle on because they're weirdos. But anyway, that's just like a wish from somebody who's gotten what they wanted with these rules. I just really hope that this isn't a one-off thing, something that could really enhance both narrative play and Age of Sigmar as a whole, if it's given that proper long-term support, because if it becomes something featured in battle tomes, it starts to naturally get balance applied to it, and once it gets balance applied to it, it suddenly becomes super viable for competitive play, which would be something that would make competitive Age of Sigmar stand out over something like 40k with its more stricter regiments and other tabletop war games. Having custom heroes at a competitive level would be the perfect end goal for something like this, but for now I'm happy using these in narrative play and one-off games with people, and maybe the odd tournament if they support it, because, like I said, these rules are so well done. So well done. As a games designer, I doff my cap, tip my hat, raise my glass to whoever on the design team worked on these rules in particular, because they're beautiful, beautiful. Like I said, something that in any other pair of hands, probably my own hands, speaking as a designer, would be horrendous, overcomplicated mess. Is just, what is it? It's 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, 4 steps, 5 steps, 6 steps, and you're done, and you're ready. Admittedly, those steps take some time, and you need to grab a blank wall scroll template from somewhere or use a web app to generate it for you, but it's super easy, and the barrier to entry is super low, and it's that sort of, as a designer, it's that there's like very little stopping you from giving it a go, and then by giving it a go, you become more invested, not only in that character that you've made, but the faction that they're made for, and the game as a whole from the back of that. So well done. After all that gushing, let's get to the match play section. So, as ever, match play brings with it a couple of minor changes and one or two big changes that shake things up quite nicely, actually. Minor changes are things like this. A new special rule that limits the number of dice rolls a player can make to negate a wound or mortal wound on a unit. It's one of those small changes with big repercussions. Gets rid of stacking abilities, turns some units into damage sponges, and should make the game a bit more exciting and fun to play for everybody. Yay, in my book there. I'm sure there's some people annoyed with that, but screw those people, you're playing the game wrong. Another little minor change that I noticed is that on the pitch battle chart, you can see there's a limit on the number of endless spells you can now include in a list. I've never seen anybody take more than 2 in my personal experience, but this sort of feels like it's preempting some future points changes or new endless spells coming out that people might want to include in every list, and therefore go over sort of having 1 or 2 to having 5 or 6, which seems mad at the current state of the game, but you never know. Also, it could be just one of those things where they've gone, most players take 1 or 2, let's reflect that in the rules of the game. We're changing the game to fit the players, which is always a nice thing, particularly for a living game like Age of Sigmar. And as usual, get the updated battle plans and terrain lists. Like I said, I'm going to leave those for much more qualified YouTubers to go through for you. You know who they are, you know what their content's like, go watch it, it's good. They have a deeper understanding of this game than I ever will. That's why I'm not going to talk about the competitive side much. And then, as we can see, meeting engagements are still a thing. I've not seen anyone actually play this format, but I can see the need for supporting a tournament-friendly mode of play, particularly for Age of Sigmar, which they want to grow over the next few years as a game. Damn it, close the document. That's happened far less than I thought it would actually going through this. Tangent, if anybody on the app team for Warhammer is watching this, please fix the iPad app. So 1, when I accidentally swipe down slightly, it doesn't close the book, and 2, let me view 2 pages side by side, because that would improve my life so much. Anyway, meeting engagements, yes. See the need for having a tournament-friendly mode of play, and I'm guessing if coronavirus hadn't happened, we would have seen a few more Warhammer World events focused around meeting engagements occur, and maybe spotlight the benefits of this mode of play a bit more. Also, get ready to take a shot, because after the meeting engagement stuff, we get Pitch Battle Coalition of Death rules. Surprise, surprise, more multiplayer battles in this year's battle tome. So, like all competitive rule sets, this trims the fat and chance for edge case cheesing from Coalition of Death, while keeping the core concept intact. Also comes with this really cool coalition matrix that sort of is, 1, as a sight to behold because the icons on it are badass, and 2, shows the tenuous relationships between all the races in the game at the moment, which is really good, not just for competitive playing, but for narrative play as well, because you can use this table to inform how your campaign works. If you're writing homebrew lore for your characters and your army, this table will help you. Definitely look at it. Take it in, soak it in, use it for your own benefit. And then one of the bigger rule changes in the match play section this year is new Realm of Battle rules, which you might be thinking, why? Well, this is all about ease of use at this point. This is about, like I said, taking what was good and making it better. So what we have here are super slimmed down versions of what we had previously. So it's reducing that level of head scratching in your list building and that sort of like last minute panic when you sit down to play a game and you roll off to decide a realm of battle, and then suddenly you're like, oh, I've not played in that realm of battle in ages, let's have a look at the stuff, and you're agonising over what to swap out, what to take, what not to take, and if you've made a mistake, and it gets you all flustered before you even start playing the game. Instead of that, we now have a couple of quick yes or no choices on including the magics and artifacts in your army list, and if you're going to use them or not. Same goes for the command abilities. It's just one little thing like it was before, but now it's in one handy, super small resource, which is great. And then the Realms game features, they just give you this sort of taste of what that realm of battle is like without breaking the game too much. And again, it stops cheesing and people taking advantage of what was there previously. So I'm all for stuff like this. Just refining what's already there, making it better, making it more potent. The last thing in match play for this year, this is what I'm talking about with the double page spreads. This wonderful banner artwork at the bottom of the page. Ruined for me. because I can't view 2 pages side by side at once. Also, it features one of the big boys, which I'm hoping we will get soon. Once new 40k is out of the way, if we don't get these, I'm going to get angry. I've been waiting for them since bloody April. Give them to me now. Anyway, last thing in match play, auxiliary objectives. Simple way to help break tied games. It does feel like a bit of an afterthought. I can see it having some impact for like super competitive players and players who take the competitive side of the game seriously and do tournaments regular and stuff like that. If these are included in tournament rules packs, it could be quite good fun, or it could be a huge headache for people. I do not know. But like I said, it's just 2 pages and that's all you get. Lastly, we come to Conquest Unbound, which this year is more of a number of appendices that sort of give you various rule packs for tournament play and all that sort of stuff. So instead of the usual allegiance ability updates and new battalions and just like support for legacy stuff, all that's gone. It's just, here's how you do tournaments, here's how you play in a tournament, here's how you run a tournament. Which is not a bad thing, and it was included in other sections in previous General's Handbook. It just seems like this section of the General's Handbook's more like, all this sort of stuff you may or may not need, we'll just shove it in this back end of the book. Same goes for the open war, army generators, and all that sort of stuff that we've seen before. So I don't think there's any changes to this year. I have not really looked into this one. And then your usual rosters and stuff, and that's it, because we've got to the points. I'm not going through the points because I don't understand the points half of the time. I just use them, I don't know them. Anyway, so yeah, that's it. There's a lot of stuff in here, but it's mostly good stuff too, which is great to see. The main thing I got from this year's General's Handbook is that AOS 2nd Edition continues to go from strength to strength as a game. And while we're entering a bit of a quiet period with that at the moment, with the release of 40k sort of sucking all the oxygen out of the rule, people will eventually realise Age of Sigmar is the superior game, and then we will win. But for now, we'll let them have their new Space Marines. Anyway, yes, the General's... sorry. I just like Age of Sigmar, guys. The General's Handbook 2020... the General's Handbook 2020 shows there's room for experimentation and new ideas, alongside refining the competitive side of the game. It shows that the game is super healthy, which is awesome. And that's all we want from these books, particularly as we're probably in the last year of 2nd edition of Age of Sigmar from this point. I would not be surprised if we get 3rd edition next year, or at the latest, the year after. And this gives a good indication that the future is bright. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. I'm the Casual Hammerer. Don't forget to like and subscribe and all that stuff, and please comment down below with your thoughts on this year's General's Handbook.